A predatory man is punished for his wicked actions. I discuss this and more on today's episode. Welcome back to Around the Weird, a booktube channel where I talk about all the unusual and out of the ordinary literature that I've found in my travels. And I have a bit of an interesting story for you today. Today I want to talk about a short story because it is Short Story Tuesday, and today's short story is all about predatory men and maybe karmic justice, if you want to call it that. I am referring to Absit by Angelica Gorodischer, which was published around 2016. For those who don't know, Angelica Gorodischer was an Argentinian writer who lived between the 1920s and the 1930s and 2022, thereabouts. She died pretty recently. She was known for writing about science fiction, crime type stories, and she had a feminist take on her work. I think Ursula K. Le Guin was a fan of her work as well, and she is pretty celebrated in Argentina for how well she's written and the notoriety she's gained. So, pretty interesting author. This is the first time I've encountered her. Most of her work hasn't really been translated, but there have been some attempts. This is a translation, so it's not in the original Spanish. So it might not be exactly the same, but it's probably pretty close. And so, yeah, I'm pretty happy to have found this writer. Without further ado, let's talk about Absit. I will do a summary, a little bit of analysis, and we will move on from there. So Absit focuses on a strange man who comes into a neighborhood and stops by a house and sees a young girl in her front yard, just playing by herself. We see that he has predatory thoughts about how soft this girl is, which pretty much straight up says that this man is a pedophile, and he seems to have had previous encounters with other girls, so he's well practiced, a terrible human being, among many other things. And he questions this young girl, hoping that her family is home so that he can just go on his way, because he doesn't want to do this, it seems. But they don't seem to be home. Her father doesn't live there, and her mother is busy doing something else. And there are construction workers who are working at the house, but they don't seem to be there right now either. And so the young man is just like, I'll give you this doll, let's go somewhere and hide and just interact by ourselves, which is not a good thing to happen with strange men. The girl says that she'll take him to the backyard, where there's a lot of trees, things are pretty well hidden, but there is some construction going on. And she ends up pointing out a well in the backyard that they're planning on filling with cement. And I think you can kind of guess maybe where the story is progressing. If you're like me, I kind of understood a little bit. So the girl is like, my mom doesn't want me going anywhere near the well because it's filled with scorpions and whatnot. And she's like, go look. And so he goes and looks, and then the little girl pushes him into the well. He falls down. He's not really hurt, but he is stuck in the well and can't seem to get out. He starts saying very mean things to the young girl, calling her a bitch, I think, among many other things, a brat, indicating his true manner, his true character, and not a good person. He keeps shouting, hoping that somebody will see him or hear him. And he also tells the girl to go to one of the corner stores to alert someone, which she does not seem to do. And she even looks into the well at one point in a sort of malicious manner, indicating that maybe she intended to do this, maybe she was just as evil as him in some way, or probably not just as evil, or that there was something more to this girl than meets the eye. The man seems to be stuck down there. There weren't any scorpions as far as he could see, but he seemingly dies. And we find this out because a few days later, the construction workers approach the the mother and say, we think a dog has died in the well and we need to get it out before we can fill it with cement. And the mother's like, okay, well, yeah, that's just what's going to happen, and that's where the story ends. In terms of analysis, this is a pretty dark and very fascinating story. I was not expecting this when I first encountered this story. It does kind of read like a creepypasta, one of those scary stories that you find on the internet. Be careful of who you encounter, or maybe someone trying to portray a wicked person getting punished in a very creepy manner. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's bad, like you might find with some creepypastas, like on Reddit or something. I think this is a pretty excellently written short story here. But one of the themes that Gorodischer is working with here is wicked punishment for the wicked. Essentially what is happening in the story is that a pedophile, if we're using plain language to describe this man, is being pushed into a place he cannot leave. He is essentially stuck, and he will most likely die in this place. He did bad things to other people, and now as a result he is starving. He's scraped up, can't seem to get out, and he encounters death. He dies at the end of the story. So he is getting punished for his actions. Now, who is doing the punishment? You could argue that it's just the universe. This man tried to, harm one too many little girls, and he got punished as a result. Or it's God, that there's some, higher power that saw what he was doing, and he is now getting punished for his actions. Going even further, we might argue that this is hell, that this man died, and this is his version of hell, to be punished for eternity, because the way the little girl looks in the story, and I'll talk about that in a few moments, it kind of makes it look like this girl is a demon or maybe an angel. I think he does use angel to kind of describe her, and when he's trapped in the well, and so that would imply that maybe it was a trap, like you were luring this man in order to punish him or something like that. Allow me to read you an interesting quote from this. The girl didn't move. She didn't speak. She did nothing against the black, black sky full of stars. She changed, though. She changed. The stars came like a spoonful of soup. They came and they spilled a soup of stars over the little round head leaning over the rim of the well. Suddenly, she was white or silvery. That's it. And full of light, like the sky. Oh, the angels. It was the angels. He knew God was going to hear him, and they were coming to rescue him, which is an interesting quote. I do not think that God actually came to save him, because he dies, but he sees her kind of morph. Maybe it's a hallucination brought on by starving, brought on by the pain, and this isn't actually happening to the girl, but you could also make an argument that something more supernatural is taking place, that she was an angel or a demon, or an angel or a demon was working through her to punish this man, to punish the wicked for their bad actions here. Another interesting element of this story is the theme of the predator becoming prey. So a pedophile who harms others now knows the feeling of harming others, and they're going through a lot of different emotions. This man he's feeling anger and what the girl did to him. He's begging, demanding to be let out. He's sad. He's scared. He's hallucinating things, as I've said before. He's terrified about what's going to happen, and so now he knows what all these children that he's abused have known, and it's a horrifying feeling for him. He doesn't like it, and if he ever were to escape, which he probably won't, he might not learn anything from this lesson, because people like him are probably not capable of learning, or their minds are altered in a way where it's not possible for them to learn that lesson, that they might always place the blame on something else. Maybe like he was doing in this story, where he was kind of placing the blame on the girl for being attracted to her because her skin was soft and he couldn't just resist it, which is really gross and creepy. But credit to Gorodischer for, portraying these predatory men as they actually are. So I also have to ask, is this irony in this story with the predator becoming the prey, the pedophilic man, the pedophile, like getting punished by the little girl in this story being pushed into the well? I feel like that's a classic example of literary irony. If you disagree, let me know. But I do think if you're like presenting this story to others, which I don't necessarily think you would maybe present in high school, just given the themes and what the content of the story, maybe parents wouldn't necessarily like that, even if someone does get punished. Although, this is a good example of irony, I think, which is something that high school teachers, middle school teachers try to demonstrate to young people. So this is a good example of that. If you ever want to showcase that good example of irony to somebody out there. Anyway, those are my thoughts on Absit by Angelica Gorodischer, as you say in her native tongue, Spanish. Pretty fascinating story. Very short, but I think Gorodischer gets her point across pretty well, and is able to successfully punish the wicked in this story in a very kind of brutal way. Like, you almost feel for the character, like the man in this story, because nobody wants to be trapped in a well to die. That wouldn't be a pleasant death, but also you kind of are happy that that's happening, because that's one less person who's going to get abused as a result of this man's actions. But if you read this story before, you simply want to say something about it, what I said here, let me know in the comments below. I would love to hear from you and have a discussion about this. Otherwise, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so that more people can find out about this author or this short story if they do not already know. And until then, I wish you the best of luck in your weird and hopefully not falling into well travels. Yeah, farewell.